Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Geek Out on Geek Wave. I am your host, Eric Agar, and I'm joined by my lovely friends and co-workers at Geek Wave. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'm Sam, and I wear a hat and jeans.
Hi guys, my name is Jason. I'm brown.
I am Ronny, and I won't give any physical descriptions.
All right, cool. Thanks, guys. So, have you guys seen anything recently that you really like? Any movies, play any games, watch any shows? Just like, what's something recently that's like captured your attention?
I pretty much just saw a Thirst Trap movie about James McAvoy.
Oh, I think I saw that too.
That's weird. It's crazy. I think I saw that one as well.
Yeah. For people who are like confused or like, what are these guys talking about? Like, what's going on? We're referring to the movie Speak No Evil that came out recently. It's a horror movie starring, of course, the man himself, James McAvoy. Pretty good film, honestly. Great in suspense, and not gonna lie, I had to stand out for like 5 minutes because that movie got a little bit too intense for me. I'm not afraid to admit it. But anyway, we also saw two interesting previews during that movie. Yeah, so we saw previews for the Nosferatu remake and the Wolfman remake, and it got me really thinking, like, you know, should Hollywood, and not just Hollywood in general, but like different mediums, you know, games, movies, TV shows, do we want all these remakes, or would we prefer these original ideas or sequels to these original ideas, or even to the remakes? Like, where should we draw the line in the sand and be like, enough is enough? Like, let's stop remaking the same stuff for almost centuries now in terms of like the Wolfman, or you had the Invisible Man a few years ago that I believe, if I remember correctly, the original came out in the 30s.
Speaking of remakes, Speak No Evil is a remake of a movie that came out 2 years ago, by the way.
Yeah.
It's
just crazy.
I think it's a Dutch or Danish movie. Came out 2 years ago and decided to remake it just like that.
And Invisible Man came out in 33.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So it is almost a century old now.
Yeah, and we've had, I think there's two maybe remakes I can remember, because there was one in, I think, the early 2000s, which was not called The Invisible Man. It was something like it.
There's a book called The Invisible Man, but
Yeah.
And then we had the one in 2020 that I believe was made by A24?
Universal.
Or Universal,
Universal.
yes, my bad, Universal.
they own the
And-
monsters.
They own all of them.
Yeah, and they're making now a Wolfman remake, and then, of course you have the Nosferatu remake, which the original Nosferatu, for people who don't know, was just a really copyright-friendly Dracula. Or like they didn't have the rights for Dracula, so they made Nosferatu, and now they're making a remake of it, which personally I'm more lenient towards because the last Nosferatu movie was from the silent era. So I feel like with that jump it's okay, but like as you're talking about, Jason, with Speak No Evil, with the 2-year gap, it also reminds me of in the video game world, you had The Last of Us Remastered, which was a remaster of a 1-year-old game. Granted, you know...
It was a remake, not the remaster. Remaster came out a bit ago, so there's been two.
Yeah.
Remastered, and then there's the
Yeah, a
remake.
remaster and the remake. And the remaster came out a year after the original. Granted, you know, the original Last of Us came out at the very end of the PS3's life cycle. The PS4 was very popular. They obviously like money, so, you know, they're going to port one of their greatest games, arguably of all time, onto their new platform. And then you had the remake, which, for the PS5, which, correct me if I'm wrong, they barely changed anything.
They remade all of the graphics from the ground up. As far as the story and gameplay goes, it's pretty much the same game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like another thing to go off of remakes too is we see a lot of reboots in a way. Like we saw it with the Call of Duty series a few years ago with Modern Warfare 2019, as a lot of people call it, where it's kind of the same story, but there's some things that are changed. Like you still have the same characters, the same general idea, the same general setting, but some of the plot points are slightly different. I don't know how you guys feel about those kind of reboots and comparisons to remakes.
Well, my question is, how soon do you think James Gunn's DC universe is going to be rebooted?
Oh, that's true. With the DCU ending and Snyder basically, unfortunately, being kicked out.
Yeah.
I think a big argument of like reboots and requels and like sequels and whatever is like the time it takes between the last one and the next one. And I don't know, for me at least, like it's a bit silly to have like remasters of things, you know, where it's like it came out 2 years ago and let's make a new one. But I honestly don't care as long as it's good. Like if it's good, then they had a reason to make it, right? If it's bad, then I mean, there never should have been like a thing. But I mean, that's just me.
I think that's fair. I think also touching on reboots though, I like it when they have space between it because like right now with the DC reboot, I think it's going to be very interesting seeing how that connects with all the other DC things going on with the Joker movie because that's a separate universe as well as the Batman and the Penguin that just came out.
Yeah.
That are their own Batman reboot.
And then adding on to that, James Gunn is keeping all of his characters from the Suicide Squad movies into the new universe, but everyone else is being recasted though, that's also going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Like John Cena is still Peacemaker. Yeah, Harley Quinn is still. I mean, Margot Robbie is still Harley Quinn, and all those characters are staying.
She's actually not.
Wait, really?
Elaborate.
She is not doing Harley Quinn anymore. This is kind of like background knowledge, but like, you know, for Birds of Prey and the Suicide Squad and stuff, she was actually like a heavy creative force behind those two movies. Not Suicide Squad, but definitely Birds of Prey. And that was kind of her last hurrah, I guess. So I think there will be new castings for Harley Quinn, but it is kind of weird that he's keeping his Peacemaker universe alive.
Yeah.
Do you know if season 2 of Peacemaker will also fit into that?
I saw like leaked images of it, and it shows like Peacemaker like in front of a mural of himself, but with like a different suit almost, but he's still wearing his original suit. So there's like speculation going around that he's gonna like end up in the new universe, and he has no idea how he got there, that's what people are like rumoring.
Okay, so like kind of a soft reboot for him.
Yeah,
It's so messy.
it is.
Anytime you mix like two universes with the reboots, it gets very messy. Like with the new Deadpool movie that came out, where the whole kind of point of it was Deadpool enters the MCU and then it ends with him still in the Fox universe, technically.
Yeah, that's
It's like they didn't want to commit.
Picking up Marvel, I want to bring up too, like the idea of reboots. With all the Spider-Man reboots that have, like, of course we had the original Sam Raimi trilogy, and then the Andrew Garfield movies after that, and then finally ending up with the Tom Holland movies in the MCU and with No Way Home. I feel like eventually audiences get burned out with like how much of a character there is. Granted, Spider-Man is probably one of, if not, no, he's one of the most beloved superhero characters of all time. But I feel like a lot of people got tired of seeing Peter getting bit by the spider, Uncle Ben dying, Aunt May giving her speech. Boom, now he's Spider-Man. So, like, I feel like there's, like, a line to draw in the sand with stuff like that of, like, when should we just move on and just keep the characters from before, or should we just keep rebooting?
I guess when it comes to, like, Spider-Man, like Tom Holland, Spider-Man in the MCU, they did skip all that stuff where his parents are dead, Uncle Ben's already dead. I think the same thing with James Gunn's Superman. It's not an origin story. Yeah, he's going to be Superman for a while.
The Batman. Like, we're with a new Batman who is very fresh in it, but we don't see his parents die or anything. We mostly get that story outside the universe, even though they touch on it a little bit.
Yeah.
And what they do touch on is mostly new for film goers, with whether the Waynes are corrupt and the Arkhams and all that.
Yeah, there's like a right way to do these types of things, like especially with superheroes or like things in the mythos of like the public knowledge that people know extensively about. Like you can just hit the ground running at this point, which is nice.
I feel like that's definitely a problem in the early 2000s, or like when superhero movies were first coming out, like, you know, with Batman and Spider-Man as the main examples. But I feel like now people just know. Like, you go ask anyone, they're like, oh yeah, you know, Batman's parents were killed by Joe Chill in Crime Alley. Like, everyone pretty much knows at this point, but it's like, how do we kind of reinvent the wheel while keeping the origin of the character?
I guess like the same thing with like Spider-Man, like everyone knows, it's just a nerdy kid who got bit by a spider. And I remember in Civil War, he should have just told Tony Stark, yeah, I got bit by a spider. Boom. That's it. That's all that happened.
And also, in a way, too, if you think about it, No Way Home is kind of an origin story for the hero as well, because that's when he has his Uncle Ben, or in that case, Aunt May scene, where he's going to make it scale and motivates him, and then he's more committed to being Spider-Man. I feel like that's an interesting way of going about it, that, you know, you're waiting not for the first movie in your trilogy or however long your series is, but you're waiting till later to kind of have audiences go, oh, okay, this is what motivates the character.
No, I completely agree with that. Almost, like the three movies that he got almost served as his like origin to like what it truly means to be Spider-Man, how he's like street tier, no one knows who he is. Like he's putting his full effort into being Spider-Man instead of Peter Parker pretty much, which was kind of the basis of the first 3 movies. But it just sucks how the rumors going on that it's going to be a multiverse movie again, which is I don't know how I feel about that.
It was so cool in 2018 or whatever when we were like, hey, Into the Spider-Verse, that's a cool concept. That's a cool movie. And now it's just everyone is doing it.
Yeah. It's like what the comics have always been, which is weird. But like I think like some characters people will always be willing to watch, like Spider-Man. I think you can reboot that pretty much until the end of time. Batman as well. Like all these characters. And like you're right, I do agree we need like breaks between those things, but some characters just never die, and like.
And as much as I do think we need breaks, I will probably die before I stop watching Spider-Man or Batman movies.
Yeah.
And actually, going back to your point, Jason, about like Spider-Man's origin going home, if you think about it, the Batman is kind of an origin for Batman too, because it's one of, if not, I believe, the only movie live action that Batman has a character arc. He starts the movie super angry and just this vessel of vengeance, but then by the end, he learns how to be a hero and a symbol of hope, which he's known for in the comics and his later years. So I feel like that's also a good way of like taking your character, putting them in a quote unquote origin story, but still having it, not go through the same old song and dance as all the movies before. Like, oh yeah, here's his whole origin. Rather, it's the part that matters in context of the plot of that movie.
No, I completely agree with you. And then adding on top of that, the Bruce Wayne for the Batman is also not really established at all. Like when you think Bruce Wayne, you really think about that billionaire, playboy, philanthropist type person. And that's not really him in the movie. He's it's pretty awkward, pretty depressing, full emo era for Robert Pattinson's Batman. I feel like there was a lot of instances with him and the new mayor of Gotham City, how she was like, oh yeah, you're super rich, but you're not doing anything to help the city. But obviously they don't know that he's literally Batman and helping the city in that way.
Risking his life every night to help the city.
So I feel like that's like the beginning of his character arc as Bruce Wayne and how he's going to balance those two personas in a way and how he's going to help the city with, the other resources he have and not just,
and
fighting.
I think that movie very much set up the second movie. Like we don't know much about that yet, but I think that set up.
The script just finished today, apparently.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
I think that movie very much set us up to see what he does as Bruce Wayne, though, because the whole point of that movie was he's inspiring change, but it's not necessarily the change he wanted to inspire, because he inspired the Riddler and his whole crew. So I think what we could see in the second movie is him realizing that he can inspire change as Batman, but also as Bruce Wayne, who's got much more sway socially than Batman does.
And I feel like that's when they're really going to need someone with his, because everyone knows who he is. He's almost like a rumor. Like, Bruce Wayne's a rumor in Gotham City. And with Gotham City pretty much flooded, they're going to need someone like him to really help out.
And it's almost funny, I didn't realize this till now, Bruce Wayne's probably just about as much of a rumor as Batman is.
Exactly.
If not more, right?
I remember when he knocked at the Penguins Club as Batman, and everyone was not shocked to see him. But when Bruce Wayne showed up, the two people in the front were like, "Holy shit, it's Bruce Wayne!"
They're like, "Wait, what are you doing here?" Yeah.
He never. We ever realize how they're never at the same place at the same time? Bruce Wayne and Batman. It's kind of crazy, huh?
You think people would have put it together? Bruce Wayne lives alone with his butler on this hill in this really weird, funky house, and no one sees him. But whenever he's gone, Batman shows up. If you put 2 and 2 together.
In real life, the internet would find that out so quickly.
We got 50 Ring camera doorbell footage videos going out.
Well, especially considering the fact that he just at night walks around as Bruce Wayne basically, but with the bat suit in his backpack.
I know too. You think about how many times Batman or Spider-Man will go into an alley and put in their costume. You ever think someone above is like, "Hey, what are you doing down there?"
It's oh my gosh, he goes to my high school. That's Peter Parker.
That's him.
Well, there's a good clip of I want to say it's an old Superman cartoon. I never saw it, but it's him walking into a photo booth thinking it's a telephone booth, and he changes into his Superman costume as Clark Kent, and then walks out, and the kid picks up photos revealing his identity. And Superman has to grab it from him and rip it in half.
That's pretty good. I got
oops. Yeah. I kind of going back to remakes and reboots and whatever. This is a kind of a side note, but I was literally reading a middle century reboot technically of an old story in my English class. So humans have been remaking stories since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
and just reinventing the wheel, slightly every time. Like we're talking about like Batman and Spider-Man. So I don't think we're ever going to escape them.
Well, you also get like all those really old like ballads, like the Epic of Gilgalad,
Is it like Gilgamesh something?
Gilgamesh.
Yeah.
Or you look at like Romeo and Juliet, like West Side Story, it's just a remake or like retelling of that classic tale, and like you see it through time. And also, I want to talk about this real quick about something we really don't see that often, and this is kind of like a not exactly on the point example, but I feel like it'll be on the rise in certain years. It's a sequel reboot. A few years ago, Halo Infinite came out, and the developers, Sleeper 3, were talking about how it's like a spiritual reboot for the franchise, as in like the setting, being on the Halo ring, and then like in terms of gameplay, classic, enemies, classic ideas, classic quotes mixed in as well, and just a lot of almost nostalgia, very subtle nostalgia, but it also carries on the story from the previous game. I don't know if you guys have seen any other examples like that, but I feel like that's where remakes and reboots will go, like with Batman 2 or like, any sequels to the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies or games in general, just this kind of reboot, like going back to the roots and having those classic ideas with some like nostalgia sprinkled in there if you're paying attention, but while carrying on those stories from before.
Yeah.
Well, Eric, I think
kind of soft reboot.
Yeah, you're talking about like, requels, and that's the thing that Scream did. That's like continuing the old saga.
Or like the Halloween movie that came out.
True.
Yes, because it was Halloween, and then the requel was called Halloween also, and then everything after the second movie, there was like, this never happened, pretty much.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And I think that Halloween did that again with a movie called Halloween H2O.
Yeah.
They did the exact same thing. We're like, we're going to keep this, and then just move forward.
The Halloween timeline is a mess, but we don't talk about the Hellraiser one.
Well, it's very
9
interesting
movies.
in the way that it's a mess, because like they go down the first movie, and you get all those movies that came out after it. And then at some point they're like, you know what, we liked that story, but also we think after the first one we could have gone down this route. So I think it's very interesting the way they did it. Instead of having it be a reboot, they instead go back to the first one and say, where can we continue this that doesn't go down this path to the left?
I guess adding on to that, so in my opinion, the biggest reason why people reboot and do stuff like that is just to make more money. But do you guys think like another reason they reboot certain franchises is to fix past mistakes for characters?
For sure.
Remedy the mistake known as Halo 5. We don't talk about that game at all.
That's what Sorry,
I was going to say, I know with the, this may get a little off track, I guess, but with the adaptation kind of side of things with the Percy Jackson TV show, I know Rick Riordan specifically said, is like, something really nice about adapting this in a new format is I get to go back and kind of change the things that I wish I did differently.
Yeah.
That's true.
This is what people are trying to do for, and I hate to mention her, but like for Harry Potter, the new series, like doing things differently. Any story that you've done in the past and you have like, the ability to, explore different avenues, I mean, people are going to do that, I feel.
And in terms of games too, we look at the Resident Evil franchise and they've been remaking all their own games, but they've been going back and changing it. Like I remember with the original RE remake for the GameCube and PS2 when that came out, they just basically said that they took that basis from the PS1 game and got to add and change all the stuff that they couldn't do on that original hardware. And then the same thing with the Resident Evil 2, 3, and most recently 4 remakes of just going back and keeping the same core of the game, like same mechanics, general plot, story, but making it how they envisioned it all those years ago.
Ronny, I really want to go back to the Harry Potter situation you just did. So obviously, I'm just going to go to the Snyderverse just for a second, right? The Snyderverse failed, and that's one of the main reasons why they wanted to reboot the DC franchise. Harry Potter, on the other hand, is one of the biggest franchises ever, and those movies made a lot of money. And they're still well known to kids and adults today. And there's so many different stories they can add on top of the wizarding world, because it only takes place in Hogwarts. And from those movies and books, you can tell there's so many other wizarding schools.
But the world building is shit, though.
That's true. Yeah. So why do you think they're completely restarting that specific franchise?
Well, do you want to get into that? Because I have my theory.
Go for it.
Let's hear it, Ronny.
Well, there's money, but also, I won't mention her name, but the author of those books and the creator of that universe, has been having a bit of pushback from her original cast for her views currently. And I think that she's doing it, one, obviously for money, but she's a billionaire, so she doesn't need that much money. But two, to kind of reshape her image and reshape the people that are in her universe, because people that were in her universe before aren't really supporting her anymore. So I feel like it's kind of a vanity project, and because she can. Like, Warner Brothers is just like, hey, the Harry Potter game did really great. How can we make more money for this studio? So that's what I think it is. It's like, you know, the author's like wants and then the studio's needs, if that makes sense.
Back to what you were talking though about Jason with expanding more. We kind of like, I agree that too, but when is like too much and they should just go back to the like core ideas? I'm talking about like Star Wars here, of course, because Star Wars has been expanding a lot. Granted, some of them have been really good, others have been really bad, and then others have been the acolyte. And yeah, a little shade there. But yeah, I feel like in order to like, you need to strike a balance with like expanding on the universe, but also making stuff make sense in context of the universe. Of course, I believe that the Harry Potter series and the Star Wars series are the two opposite extremes of this.
Mm-hmm.
But finding the middle ground, I feel like is the most important to kind of expand on your universe in a way that A, you know, makes these companies a lot of money, but also B, the fans will love and just are these great stories that people can do.
I like what you said about, you know, the difference between continuing the story and redoing the story, like what Harry Potter is going to do. Like, you're right. Like, it makes more sense to me to expand the universe with people in different stories in different parts of that world to help flesh it out, rather than go back all the way to the original. We have books and we have movies for Harry Potter in that specific case. And now we're going to have a TV show that's telling the exact same story with minor changes. But, like, is that really worth it?
Exactly. And going back to, like, saying what you said about Percy Jackson, like, they only got the first two movies for Percy Jackson after the books came out. And those movies were really mixed, and they didn't even finish the entire Percy Jackson series. So in that case, it really did make sense for them to reboot it as a series. But, like, yeah, going for the Harry Potter, like, everyone loved those movies. They made a lot of money. They're so well known today.
It's iconic.
So it's like, why?
And also, they were made pretty recently.
Yeah.
When was
the last one came out in like 2011? I remember going to the theaters.
Part two,
yeah.
Wow.
When you guys think they're going to remake the original Star Wars movies?
Okay, I really wanted to add on to what you said, right? I feel like Star Wars is the negative of what I said about expanding stories. Because now Star Wars is expanding so much that it's getting confusing and the timeline's weird and the writers don't know what happened at certain points, so they're adding stuff, and that's just the lore is going all over the place. I feel like Star Wars is the one example where it's like,
it's too much.
Maybe expanding does have a bad side to it almost.
Maybe it just needs to reboot the entire thing.
What do you think fans will think about that?
I'd be aiming for that with the Ahsoka series, because I know with that ending, they end up in like a new universe, don't they?
What? I did not know this.
They're in another galaxy. Ahsoka and who else was with her? Was it just her?
No, she brought.
Because Sabine and Ezra escaped, right, on Thrawn's ship.
Yeah, I thought did Thrawn? No, I don't remember how it ended. I thought there was more than just her, but I can't remember.
It was Anakin's Force Ghost.
It was?
Yeah, he was. He was looking at her.
Yeah.
And then it ended with Baylan Skoll, the father-son from the Clone Wars. Eric, you know more about the Clone Wars than me. Can you
I did not finish the Ahsoka series.
Yeah, I was going to say, I went through it once and I was like, I did not like
They
it.
teased something now.
Ahsoka is where I stopped, because as soon as that came out, I was like, I just...
But yeah, I feel like you're saying, Jason, like it's on the polar opposite of Harry Potter, where it's a bit too much, but I feel like Harry Potter is the other extreme. It's like, we can't just keep telling the same story over and over and over.
Yeah, with Star Wars, though, like, they're kind of trying to have their cake and eat it, too. Yes, they're expanding the universe, but also they're so attached to Anakin Skywalker, like, the Skywalker, like, saga, that it just doesn't seem like they're expanding. It seems like they're convoluting instead of expanding. Sure, right?
I feel like all the movies are taking place around these three main time periods. It's either after Revenge of the Sith, right before New Hope, or after Return of the Jedi. There's so much lore, especially like in Legends and stuff, about other characters, even video games, about so many other characters that they can, make a lot of money off, but they're still not doing it because I feel like they're still attached to the Skywalker name.
Well, there's another question of, like, where does expansion become fan service? Because I know with Ahsoka when it was coming out, everybody was theorizing about, like, the the Man in Black, I guess. And they all thought he might be Starkiller, and that would have been so cool, right? But it's also a question of like, okay, where does fan service lend into expansion, and where does it actually kind of start taking away from the story?
Yeah.
Just going off on a side note, that dude looks so cool, and they did nothing with his character.
Yeah.
But yeah, like going off of that, like that's why personally I really like Mandalorian season 1. Why I believe a lot of people like Knights of the Old Republic, those games, and like parts of the Clone Wars, is that it really was separate from the Darth Vader and Anakin Skywalker story. And you guys see these other parts of the universe, and like when Mandalorian season 2, when season 1 came out, it was all original characters. The only reference you maybe had to the source material was some stormtrooper helmets lying around, and references to the Empire. That was it. But then when season 2 came out, it was just overly fan service. And going back to like Halo Infinite and I know, I'm sorry, I talk a lot about Halo. In comparison to like other properties, the only real reference you get in Halo Infinite to the other games is a line from the first game that's like an echo. Like you can barely hear it, but if you're paying attention, then you can.
Then it's there.
Yeah. Then you know.
I will say the thing with Mandalorian season 2 is I personally thought it was the best balance between fan service and really fleshing out Grogu and the Mandalorian's relationship. I thought that season they did it really well, and like, all right, we're gonna have these characters in these episodes, but they're still gonna be involved in the Mandalorian and Grogu, but it was a little different in season 3. I thought season 3 fell apart completely.
Season 3 was the most recent one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an odd one because like they totally threw away everything they built with Grogu being like a Jedi, and like just undid that whole sacrifice from season 2.
And
they didn't
follow Din Djarin
exactly.
anymore. It was
they
just
did a different
odd.
show.
They went in different directions from where they were building in past seasons. Is kind of how I felt.
Yeah, they circled right back to the Skywalkers for some reason. When they had their own thing in their own universe going, and they're like, okay, yeah, Luke shows up because the fans want Luke. And
that was season 2. But
that was season 2, right? And like, it's like the few, and I say few, but there's like probably thousands, like of vocal fans are the people that are holding different universes back from going forward.
I will say that if The Mandalorian ended with season 2, I personally would have been heartbroken. But when it comes to the story, I feel like it would have made so much sense.
Well, I think this is just a personal thing. I think it should have ended after season 2 with Grogu somewhat. And then like Grogu goes off and becomes a Jedi, and then maybe they come back, right? Like I think they should have expanded on both sides a little more of what it meant to be a Mandalorian and what it meant to be a Jedi in this time period, and then bring them both together.
So would it be like almost like season 3 would have been like a time jump when Grogu's older?
I think maybe. I think they could have done season 3 as like just the Mandalorian and explore that culture. I think it would have gotten less buzz because you don't have Baby Yoda anymore.
That would have been a good thing for his story, like how his life would have been like without Grogu, because he got him back in Book of Boba Fett super quickly. He's like, he's back.
Quick side note about Book of Boba Fett, sorry for interrupting, but like the best episodes of Book of Boba Fett were just Mandalorian episodes.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that show.
That show just derailed the whole like TV Star Wars universe, I feel.
And his Boba Fett was so cool in The Mandalorian. Like his episodes with him and what was her name? Ming-Na Wems. Yeah. When they were in The Mandalorian, that episode was really cool. They made him so OP, but then in his own show, the story went nowhere.
He's just an unk. That's what he is. He's an uncle.
That's the thing. Like with fan service, like some characters are really cool, but some characters are side characters at the end of the day.
Well, it's also like some characters should always be that cool, mysterious side character. Like Boba Fett.
Like you don't want to know more about them.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah.
You don't need
you
to.
can expand on it more in other things and like let us know. But at a certain point, it's like I don't really need to have this story of him taking over Tatooine. Right?
No,
that's the show. That's the show.
Yeah, that's Boba Fett.
No, you're right. Because the reason why Boba Fett was such a fans loved him in Return of the Jedi was because they had no idea who he was. No, not Return of the Empire. That was when he was first there. He just had a helmet. Nothing. That's all. That's all he had, and That's why people loved him so much. I feel like in Book of Boba Fett, they tried humanizing him so much that people were like, "Oh, I don't care anymore. He's not mysterious."
They make him
Cool.
sympathetic almost.
Yeah.
Even with like the new, sorry, this is sidetrack, but like the new like Joker movies, like taking these characters that aren't supposed to have their own stories and mythologizing them, giving them humanity, whatever, just makes them always less cool. Like,
Well, I think with the Joker,
I think Joker is
it does
it's a
feel
different
like
one.
an exception to me. I think because
really,
It humanizes him. It humanizes him, but he's still crazy.
Yeah,
but he's just like a guy.
Yeah.
He's just a dude.
Mhm.
I guess I really liked the Joker story still. I guess like I do see your point.
He's got a couple screws loose still.
Mm.
I think at a certain point it does feel like if you do decide to follow down this side plot, right, this side character and expand on the world, how do you expand on it without needing to rely on what's there already? Because we get stories like the Joker that I thought was cool because it didn't rely on Batman. And then you also get, what was the political Star Wars show?
Andor.
Because it didn't really rely too much on like Anakin and this.
I still have to watch that one. Actually,
So good.
Skywalker name, that was all very separate, but it still expanded on it. But then you do get to Boba Fett where it's like, okay, none of this is really expanding on the world, it's just kind of there.
It's just like filling in the blanks that we don't really need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've had a fun talk today, guys, about remakes, reboots, sequels, and everything in between. Will we talk about this more next time? We'll see. But thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Geek Out on Geek Whip. I have been your host, Eric Agar. Thank you to my wonderful co-host for joining
Yeah,
us
thanks for
today.
having me.
Thanks for having us.
And we'll see you guys next time. Go Utes!
Bye.